The goal was always to win the Boston Marathon. He was still in college, competing on the cross country and track teams at Wesleyan, but everything he did there was for a greater purpose. No college student had ever won Boston, and he was determined to be the first. He didn't take his goal lightly, and while he practiced with his teammates every afternoon, he also ran on his own nearly every morning, averaging up to 150 weekly miles. He trained every day through the snowy Connecticut winter and the rainy spring that followed, and by the time he showed up to the starting line in Hopkinton on Patriots' Day that year, he knew he was ready. He crossed the starting line with the sole purpose of winning, and 2 hours, 22 minutes, and 17 seconds later, he did just that. Today is Tuesday, August 19, 2025, and on this day in 1946, Amby Burfoot was born in Charlottesville, Virginia. In this episode, we'll hear how Burfoot became the first college student to win the Boston Marathon in 1968 and how his career evolved from the running world to runner's world in the decades that followed. Then welcome Amby Burfoot himself for a conversation about his lifelong love of the sport. I'm your host, Running Up That Hillary, and you are listening to Today in Running History. Does anyone else feel like time is absolutely flying by? I feel like I literally just recorded a Tattoos Day episode and it has already been another week. But anyways, Tattoos Day means that today's episode is sponsored by My Race Tats. These, of course, are my absolute favorite temporary tattoos with positive mantras on them that I wear as a little pick-me-up during races. And something they recently launched that I am incredibly excited about is their line of mantra tattoos in Spanish. I live in San Antonio, Texas, where probably half of my city speaks at least conversational Spanish, so I am especially excited for these to be available. Right now, the Spanish language tattoos come in 3 mantras. The first is the classic Si se puede, which means yes, you can. There's also piensa fuerte, sé fuerte, termina fuerte, which means think strong, be strong, finish strong. And then there is my personal favorite, ponte las pilas, which means essentially get your shit together, but in a nicer, much more encouraging way. Si me pueden comprender ahora, verifiquen el enlace en la descripción de este episodio o usen mi código Hillary para ahorrar un 20% en su compra de My Race Tats. And for everyone else, check out the link in the episode description or use my code Hillary to save 20% off of your purchase from My Race Tats. Now let's talk about Amby Burfoot. Ambrose Burfoot was born exactly 79 years ago today at the University of Virginia Hospital in Charlottesville. A fun fact that Amby shared with me when I originally reached out to him about coming on the podcast was that President Bill Clinton was born on that exact same day, a couple states over in Arkansas. The Burfoot family moved to Connecticut when Amby was a child, and he grew up playing baseball and basketball at the local YMCA, where his dad was the director. When he got to high school, Burfoot switched to cross country and was coached by none other than John J. Kelly, the winner of the 1957 Boston Marathon. Kelly was one of the biggest influences on Burfoot, not just in running, but his life as a whole. And it was under Kelly's tutelage that Burfoot went on to win the state championship in the 2-mile during his senior year of high school. After graduating, Amby Burfoot attended Wesleyan, where he became cross-country teammates with Jeff Galloway and Bill Rodgers. Burfoot was 2 years older than Rodgers and took him under his wing. So influential was Burfoot on Rodgers during their time at Wesleyan that the first chapter of Bill Rodgers' memoir, Marathon Man, is actually called The Teachings of Amby Burfoot. Burfoot was a senior in college when he won the 1968 Boston Marathon, and later that same year, he ran his all-time PR of 2:14:28 at the Fukuoka Marathon in Japan. In the 70s, Amby Burfoot began a decades-long stint with Runner's World magazine and served as their executive editor beginning in 1985. Over the last 3 decades, Amby Burfoot has written many books, including my all-time favorite, The First Ladies of Running, which tells the stories of 22 female running pioneers who paved the way for what women's running is today. And honestly, that book had an enormous impact on me. I read it a few years ago and had already been running for over 20 years at the time, but I hadn't heard of at least two-thirds of these stories. And that was where I got the very first inklings of an idea for a podcast like this that was focused on the history of our sport. But guys, that is plenty of me talking, so let's go ahead and welcome Amby Burfoot himself to Today in Running History. All right, I am here with Amby Burfoot. How are you doing today, Amby?
I'm feeling good today. I had a run and a swim already.
Oh, excellent. How far did you run this morning?
Well, only 3 miles, but I'm running a marathon in a couple of days, so it's a taper.
Oh, that's awesome. What marathon?
I'm pacing a friend at one of these downhill marathons in Washington State. She's trying to beat Q.
Is it tunnel,
And
the tunnel
it,
one?
it is the tunnel one for sure. And we haven't been there before. She's very nervous. I think I'm underplaying it a little bit. It'll probably be harder than I'm anticipating, but I'm looking forward to it. It sounds very unique.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I hope you have an awesome time out there. And let's go ahead and for anybody listening, can you give us a little bit of a background? There is so much to fit in there, but just how you got started with running, kind of leading up to where you are now at 10,000 feet.
Yeah, I'll try to give you the executive summary. I always say I grew up the son of a YMCA director. So in my youth, I followed all the big sports and, of course, dreamed of becoming a Major League Baseball player, a basketball player. And I was, unlike many runners, I like to say, I was actually skilled at those sports. What I didn't realize until high school was that it took more than skill. It took strength and speed and muscle and power in those sports. And those are qualities I don't have. So one day the basketball coach was very ticked off at us. We had a bad practice. He sent us out on the cross country course as punishment and made us run 3 miles. And I was the last player, the worst player on the JV basketball team, but I beat all my teammates when it came to running the cross country course of 3 miles. At that point, I had to decide stay with something I was bad at or try something new. I tried the new. I had the extraordinary good luck, random good luck that the cross country coach at my high school was John J. Kelly, a Boston Marathon winner and literally the best runner in the United States for 10 years. He was my coach. He was a million times more than a runner. It was the whole personality of John J. Kelly that attracted me so much. I sat at his feet and learned everything I could from him over a dozen or more years. Went to college at Wesleyan University, where again, randomly, three of us, myself, Jeff Galloway, and Bill Rodgers, were all on the cross country team at the same time. Incredible. I won Boston in '68. I've run the same Thanksgiving Day road race 62 years in a row, which I think is a streaking record for consecutive annual races. I had the wonderful opportunity to be executive editor at Runner's World for about 20 years. And now I'm almost 79 years old and getting older and slower every day. But I like to say that every day running becomes more important to me because the older you are in a kind of paradoxical way, the more that running can add to your health and vigor in late life.
I love that. And one of the books that you've written, I haven't bought this one yet. I am 33, but it is on the list. Is the running for life. So can you tell us a little bit about what spurred that one and what people can find in that book?
Well, I think the correct title is Run Forever, but the same
Oh yeah,
idea
sorry.
as what you said, no problem. And it's just I like the ludicrousness of the title because, of course, nobody runs forever, but it's meant metaphorically, which is that you kind of have to have that goal out there to stay motivated and determined and stay consistent. I think motivation is absolutely job number one for all runners, and Run Forever, I think and hope, is largely a motivational book. It's about some of my experiences, but particularly about the ways and the tips, the practices that runners can do, and in fact must do if they hope to continue running for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years or more, as I have now. I feel very fortunate, but I've been running since 1963. I can't quite do that math, but I'm sure it's over 60 years.
I can't do the math either, but it sounds like it would be. It sounds like, yeah, I think that would be like 62.
Exactly.
Yeah, very cool. That's awesome. And that's definitely my goal as well, as someone who started as a child. And obviously what that looks like changes throughout the decades, but I love seeing running be such a big part of people's lives for, 50 plus years. And so I love hearing about that. Now, looking at your entire running career, as far as races go, I would assume Boston 68 would be at the top of the list there, as far as memories go.
Well, of course, my memories of Boston in '68 are still very sharp all these years later. I wouldn't claim the same about all my miles and all my races, but when you win Boston as a 21-year-old, as I was then, still a college student, and even at that point, it was something that I had wanted so badly to win, to follow in the footsteps of John J. Kelly, my coach. Before me winning in '68, he was the last American in 1957. So we bridged those years. And it's incredible to me that someone should have a dream come true so early in life now. Again, I was only 21. I won't say that I didn't appreciate it then. I certainly did. It was something I poured my heart and soul into. But with each passing year, you tend to realize with more and more gratitude how fortunate you were to be healthy and strong and motivated and well coached and with lots of great tradition behind you to be able to have that one big day in April in 1968.
Yeah, that was something that stood out in Bill Rodgers' book. He talked about just how much you were head down, and that was always the goal. And a lot of people that I talk to, they're like, "Well, I wanted to win, any of my races, but and I trained to do my best and everything." And I love how focused you were. It was going to be Boston. It was going to be that Boston, and you made it happen.
I made it happen on that one day. I'm sure many of your other guests, like me, will point out that we don't win every race. In fact, everyone, literally everyone, loses more races than they win. It's simply the nature of the game. But you got to put yourself out there. You've got to learn from defeats and appreciate the victories.
Absolutely. And let's talk about Patriots Day, 1968. What are your most vivid memories aside from the moment when you cross the finish line? Because I'm sure that one stands out.
Most vivid was I wanted to wake up at 6 a.m. I set the alarm clock, and when I opened my eyes that morning, it was 5:59:59 without the alarm clock. So I thought that was a good beginning. In the locker room, we used to go inside the Hopkinton High School and change inside the locker rooms. When I went into the locker room, the race director, Jock Semple, who I knew and was a friend, he didn't look up at me. He just roared that I was coming into this private space of his and was sort of saying, "Get out of here, get out of here." And then he looked up and realized that I was Amby, protege of his great athlete, John J. Kelly. Then he welcomed me there. He was also the body that I draped my completely depleted self over at the finish line. So I remember that. Have a great photo of that. The other thing I remember is that I was pursued all the way up the hills by another runner who I was quite certain would beat me at the end because we knew each other and he was a better miler than me. He had a better kick. And it was a sunny day, and so his shadow was right behind me the whole way up all of the Newton hills. I kept trying to drop him on the hills because I knew I had to do that to take away his kick. When I couldn't drop him, when his shadow was still there at the top of Heartbreak Hill, I really sagged for a moment. I almost felt defeated right there and like I should just drop out. And I remember my shoulders and body sagging. And then I got it back together and we started down the hills. And it turned out he cramped on the downhills, which has happened to many runners at Boston. And so I didn't speed my way to a victory. He kind of cramped his way to a second place finish. But it's one of those things I always tell people you never have to make an excuse for winning. If you're lucky enough to get there, you did it on your own powers on that day.
Absolutely. And I mean, you guys had the same sort of environmental aspects of the day and all of that and it just happened to work out in your favor. So that's awesome and it's something that you'll always have on your resume. Now, looking at other races, because obviously as somebody who has been running for 60 plus years, Boston is high up there. What is another one of your top running moments, either a win or just something that personally was very memorable and important to you?
Well, I guess we all cherish our PRs, and later in the year of 1968, in December, I was invited to the Fukuoka Marathon in Japan, and that's where I ran my personal best of 2:14:29. I finished fifth in that race, which was a very, very competitive race in then, as it has been through many of its years' history. So that PR is memorable, but I always tell people the most important thing in my running career is really the longevity in the single race at Manchester on Thanksgiving Day. I was fortunate enough to win that race 9 times, I believe, earlier in my running career. And it was then the second biggest road race in New England after Boston. So it was a big deal. I won it 9 times, but you never go on winning forever. But if you're lucky and tough and determined and believe it's important, you can keep running a race year after year, no matter what your position at the end. And that's what I've done at Manchester. I've run it with pneumonia. I've run it with bad Achilles tendonitis. I've run it with through a year of depression that was followed a running injury that upset my microbiome. It was a microbiome induced depression. And I keep running it slower every year, which is what happens at a certain point. But I still get to the start line and I get to the finish line. And I consider that my greatest accomplishment in running.
I love that. And that's such a cool streak. And you and Manchester, New Hampshire?
Manchester is a suburb of Hartford,
Okay.
Connecticut.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Very cool. And looking back, so running boom of the 70s, you were right in the middle of everything. And a lot of times people will look back with these rose-colored glasses. What is something that people wouldn't necessarily think about that was not as great as it is viewed today?
Okay, I see where you're going with that. Yeah, one of the things that happened with the running boom in the late 70s was the size of the fields, whether it was at the Boston Marathon or at Manchester, Connecticut in November. The size of the fields, the growth in participants outstripped the organizers' abilities to time us. And at the finish line of these races, this happened at least once at Boston and more than once at Manchester. You could not actually run to the finish line because there was the finish chute extended backwards out onto the course. They could not process the runners at the finish line fast enough because they were handing us popsicle sticks or cards or something like that, writing times down manually before all the wonderful timing chips and digital innovations. So it was not fun to run the Boston Marathon and find out that you had to stand in line for the last tenth of a mile or the last couple hundred yards at Manchester. So fortunately, that's something that digital timing brought a really great completion to. Other things, they didn't have good fluid tables, refreshment and fueling tables on the courses. Of course, shoes weren't as good. We actually got blisters back then. I don't remember the last time I've gotten blisters from a pair of shoes, but in the 70s, we all did one time or another. So there have been so many innovations in this sport. We came from nowhere in the 1960s to an explosion in the late 70s, and that's just continued forward with all kinds of great scientific, technical, logistical innovations that have improved it in every way.
And then the inverse of that question, what is something that was better in your opinion or more enjoyable at that point before we got to today?
I'm not one to overly go in that direction because it's easy to say, but in fact, I believe the sport is bigger when it has more people involved in it. We didn't have women runners. That was a huge thing in the old days. Nobody could imagine it then. We male runners were always perfectly happy to have women in races with us. It was the stupid old gray-haired amateur officials who were opposed to women's participation. My favorite, no, that was the last question. I was going to say my favorite innovation is high-tech socks because
Oh yeah.
my cotton socks used to be just so sweaty at the end of a race. But the other thing that was good in the old days, of course, was that you knew the name of virtually everybody on the starting line with you. And so you had conversations and histories of all the people out there running with you. And it's nice to be friends with everyone. These days, I don't know everyone on the starting line at Boston. I do feel like their friend, and I do feel that they are friends to me. But it was quite wonderful in the old days to every weekend gather on Cape Cod or New Hampshire or Vermont or Western Massachusetts and see the same faces and continue the conversation that you were having the week before.
I love that. That's one of the things that I like about like smaller local races. I do a lot of those here in San Antonio, and they're not the most exciting things in the world. It's the same parks we have like three parks that these races start at, and it's the same set of trails every single time, but you see the same people, and it's nice. The big races are awesome, but there is something about that community, seeing the people that are always there, knowing the person calling the name across the finish line and all of that, and you really can't get that at some of those big races.
That's why we all love local races. They're really family affairs. It's like, your training partner or training partners are your best and most important friends because they're out there with you so often, helping you even as you help them. So I think that is one of the great things about the sport. It can be as small and intimate as you want it, or it can be as large and raucous as you want it.
Definitely. Now let's talk a little bit about Runner's World. So you were editor-in-chief for quite a long time, and then you've been involved with the magazine for forever. Out of all the decades that you have been involved with Runner's World, what is one of your favorite memories, or somebody that you've interviewed, or a story you've written?
I was lucky through Runner's World and being with them during most of the running boom to meet and interview and become friends with the likes of Bill Rodgers, Frank Shorter, Joan Benoit, Samuelson, Dina Castor, Meb Keflezighi, on and on and on. And that was all wonderful. One of my favorite stories, there were a lot of them, I must say. One of my favorite stories was one in which I compared the Wimbledon tennis tournament, which is now all money, wine, or champagne, I guess, strawberries and cream, with the history of cross country running, which also began in Wimbledon in almost the same location. And here we are 150 years ago later, and cross country running hasn't changed at all. It's still mud and guts and no money and no glory and no TV and no strawberries and champagne. They both started in the same place. They went in very, very different directions. And it's an interesting comment on sports and demographics and media, money again, and how from one place, very, very different activities can grow.
Yeah, that's so cool. And are you still involved with Runner's World today?
I'm not aware that I'm involved
Okay.
with Runner's World at this point. I'm working very happily with a great website called
Okay.
marathonhandbook.com. They're a tremendous group of people from Spain, Toronto, Costa Rica, and a few other points. And it's a digital publication that's doing a great job, and they're great people. It's like the early days of Runner's World.
Oh, very cool. I will check them out.
Please do.
Yeah, very cool. That's awesome. Now, uh, sorry. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Um, what would be some advice that you would have to somebody who is just now getting into running, no matter what their age is, but someone who didn't live through any of the previous things and just in the 2020s is a brand new runner?
Well, the values and the advice are the same for running through the ages. First of all, it's a sport of patience. Nothing happens fast overnight. You can't do tomorrow what you want to do, and probably can't do it in a week or a month. But after several months, you can start to see some dramatic progress. After several years, you can really build yourself a platform and an improvement curve and start dreaming some big dreams, whatever they might be. And the other thing is about those dreams to make sure they're completely individualized to your own tastes. Because, heck, I won the Boston Marathon. I mean, I trained really, really hard to win the Boston Marathon, but I was so lucky to be in a position to do that. That's not going to happen for most people, but that doesn't mean that running isn't tremendously valuable to you on every possible front, whether it's your emotional state, your physical state, your health, all your well-being statistics. Running is fantastic for all of those things, and you must keep it individual. You must measure yourself against absolutely no one except maybe yourself a year ago. We're all different in our actual running abilities, just as I happen to be the world's worst singer. I can't paint even a stick figure. I can't do anything more than a stick figure. But I have a certain amount of talent in running, which I'm very lucky to have been given. So be patient, follow your own path, admire those who are doing great things, but also give yourself a pat on the back for what you achieve.
I love that, especially as somebody who is not a particularly talented runner. You know, I've been doing it for 26 years. I love it. But there is no amount of training that would get me to win Boston. And so, you know, my goals will never be to win the Boston Marathon, but I can improve on myself. And I feel like a lot of people listening are in similar, but I probably everyone listening.
Basically everybody,
Basically
basically
everyone. I mean,
everyone, exactly.
unless Evans Chibet is listening or something. That'd be cool too. But most of us, you know, that's the main goal is just improving. And I love that. What does your relationship look like with the Boston Marathon these days?
It's very good. I have many friends there, even though I've been around 60 years, longer than, of course, than anyone on the Boston Marathon staff, and people change job responsibilities all the time. But fortunately, they do honor past champions. And for the past 5 or 6 years, I've been an honorary ambassador to something called the Unicorn Club, which is composed of Boston Marathon runners who have run the race. I forget whether it's 5 or 10 times at least, and want to have a slightly elevated VIP status. They can do that, and I will meet with everybody and talk with everyone, and they get some special bus rides to the start and a special start position and some other things to go along with the Unicorn Club. So that's my primary role now with the Boston Marathon. I'm just happy to go back there every spring and see so many old friends and to see the race thriving in a way that we always hoped it would back in the 1960s. But in truth, we never had any inkling then that there would be a running boom, that there would be 32,000 runners in Hopkinton, and who knows how many hundreds of thousands who would like to be there if they could.
It's so funny. When I ran Boston, my number was I was 32,083. I have it on my on my wall. I had to check. But yeah,
There you go.
I was like the largest number that year. I was like I didn't even realize there were 32,000 people running. But I had like I didn't find a single person with a number higher than mine. So it's funny that you said 32 exactly.
Right.
Um Now, when this airs, this will be on your 79th birthday. Looking back at 29-year-old Amby, what advice would you give him?
Well, I think I just mentioned it a few minutes ago. I had no patience when I was young. I don't have as much patience as I should now at 79, but I had none when I was young. So when I was injured, I had a metatarsal foot fracture once, and the doctor said, take 6 weeks off. And I was like, right. I took one day off and then I started running on a fractured toe the next day. And the result was that I lost 12 weeks instead of 6 weeks. And I did that several other times with injuries because I was so young. I was so obsessive. I so much wanted to get to the Boston Marathon podium or something similar to that. And I thought that a lost day was the end of the world. Well, you realize after many, many years, I think that running is gives you a little bit more generous time frame than that, and particularly if you've been in pretty good shape. And then you get a slight injury. It's usually just a strained muscle or something. You can definitely take days and even weeks off and bounce back quite quickly and bounce back stronger than ever. And it's so worthwhile to do it that way rather than to hurry things and to risk a perhaps more serious injury. I still don't like injuries. I've been fortunate. I haven't had many of them. I still try to run too soon after an injury, but I'm perhaps 5% smarter than I was when I was 20, and so I'm making progress. It's slow progress, but I'm making some, and I do appreciate that my body is good to me and lets me get back in shape after I've been out of shape with an injury. So I know the return to running can go smoothly now.
That's such good advice. And patience is so hard and you see so many runners who, they wear it like this badge of honor like, oh, they said that my all my bones are broken, so I'm going to test them out by going for a 10-mile run and so it's good to hear, somebody at your level of experience advocating for the opposite.
Well, I always say that our greatest strength as runners, which is our consistency, determination, motivation, zeal to get back on the road, those lead to great success in running and in life. But it can also be our greatest weakness if we overdo it with an injury. And so you have to learn to balance the right time to press on harder and the right time to take it easy and kick back for a while.
Absolutely. Now, just one final question. So, on this podcast, we talk about historic people, historic races. What are some famous races or figures in the running world that you would like to see featured on this podcast?
On the podcast. As you were asking the question, it ended a little differently than I thought. But as you were asking the question, the first thing that popped to my mind was old John A. Kelly, who finished the Boston Marathon. I believe it was 58 times, which is still a record, although it may be matched or eclipsed in a couple more years. When I first began running in the 60s, old John was, I don't know, maybe he was 50 years old. And everybody thought that was the craziest thing they had ever seen. I mean, can you imagine someone running when they were 50 years old? It was unthinkable. And so he was an inspiration to so many of us then, and is at least part of the reason why so many of us did continue into our 50s and 60s and 70s and beyond. Now I'm a member of a group of digital marathoners who are all over 75 and still training for marathons. We know we're not fast. We know we're not going to win anything, but we're out there motivating each other to keep with it and keep healthy and strong and as vigorous as we can. I think that's one of the very, very important developments in running over the last 50 years. And I think that old John Kelly was most definitely number one to get there and set the example for all of us. So he's someone whose memory and history and accomplishments I truly cherish.
Okay, great. Yeah, and he's actually on the schedule. So so we will be having that episode, I believe, in September. Yes. No, October 6th. So
Okay.
so that's
Okay. So,
perfect. I'm glad to
for-
hear that that you think that would be a good figure to cover.
absolutely. No one better.
Awesome. Well, Amby, thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful time in Washington and that your race is great, and that your friend that you're pacing has an awesome race as well.
Hillary, thank you so much. It's been fun chatting with you today.
Wow, what a cool guy. And I love how much running is still a part of his life, including continuing to run marathons at nearly 79 years old. And today he is officially 79, so I hope all of y'all will join me in wishing Amby Burfoot a very happy birthday. That is the show for today. Thank you all so much for continuing to tune in. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and then send this episode to everyone in your running group. I will put links in the episode description to Amby Burfoot's books, as well as to the Marathon Handbook, where he is focusing his contributions these days. They have a great newsletter and some awesome content that I think y'all will really love. I will also put the link to my race tats in the description, and don't forget that you can save 20% by using my code Hillary at checkout. Join me tomorrow as we hear about what female runners in the 1920s organized before they were allowed to compete at the Olympics. I'm your host, Running Up That Hillary, and this has been Today in Running History. Intro music, here it is. There is also piensa fuerte, sé fuerte, termina fuerte. Okay, I'm going to start that over. I do not want to sound like an idiot when I'm trying to speak Spanish, so just delete all that. Right now, the Spanish language tattoos come in 3 mantras. The first is the classic Si se puede, which, dang it, that's the English part, which means, okay. In the 70s, Amby Burfoot he didn't become, Runner's World, okay. In the 70s, Amby Burfoot became, no. And then here's the interview. Hey, Amby. Oh, hey. Okay. How was winning Boston? Oh, it was pretty cool. All right. there's the interview, and then you can save 20% by using, dang it, I lost my train of thought. Okay. I will also put the link to my race tie. God dang it, this is like the last sentence. Okay.